All right, Steve. So, where I want to start with you is I read that you started on the trumpet. Is that something you still play?
I haven't played the trumpet in many, many years. That was
Okay.
kind of what I did. That was my musical childhood.
How did that set you up for what was to come? Because you play a whole host of instruments, and you've over the years you've also played quite eclectic, quite an eclectic mix of music. So, how did that set you up for kind of your musical foundation?
Well, I think it was actually a good musical foundation because it got me, first of all, I had to learn how to read music very young. So that was kind of cool to get in. Not that you need to read music to be a great musician by no means,
Sure.
but it is cool to know the language and, expand where you might take your own musical endeavors. So I guess it kind of put me in that world at a young age, and then there was quite a discipline too to practice
Mhm.
the trumpet, and I was into it. I liked the sound of the trumpet, and um, I was also listening to a lot of classical music as a result of playing the trumpet, which I think was a good move. I consider myself fortunate.
If you look at the type of musician that you are now, is there a lot of overlap between what you did? For instance, you had the Steve Blanco trio as well, and you made some albums. Is there kind of an overlap with what you did in your earlier years to what you do now?
Oh, yes, definitely. It's all connected. The thing about the piano, that's what I spent the most amount of time playing. But before that, I was a drummer. That's how I really got into metal, rock and metal, was because I was playing the drums. I started playing the drums, I think, when I was like around 12 or 13 or something.
Okay.
And I played the drums all the way into my maybe very early 20s. And then I just have to add that when I was a kid, a small kid, I also was into keyboards.
Mm.
So like I had like a this is before the internet, but I
Right.
had I had like a studio set up in my the bedroom in my parents' house with like a couple synths, and I used to use tape machines to like try to multi-track. I didn't even know what I was doing. I was a kid. But so I was always into the keyboard thing. It was kind of always there. So it kind of was all happening together. But discipline wise, it was definitely trumpet, then drums, then piano, then bass.
Okay.
That helps
But
put it all together.
am I right in saying now it's especially live, it's predominantly or mostly bass, and then in the studio, obviously you do keys and a whole host of things. But is that kind of the way it is now?
Yeah, in Imperial Triumphant, I'm playing the bass. That's the main thing I do. I use a
Hmm.
bunch of pedals and I try to get all kinds of different sounds, probably because I hear all these different things from playing these other instruments.
Sure.
Oh, and wait, let me just circle back to what you were asking before. So the carryover is very apparent because I listen to all genres of music, or many genres of music.
Mm.
And then the music of Imperial Triumphant has all that kind of, it's like a melange of all different kinds of stuff. So that would be the connection still. But
So,
yeah, I play mostly bass. I do play a lot of the keys on the recordings,
mm,
and we talk about incorporating more keys live, but there's logistics involved. So we're a
sure.
small operation, so we haven't done that yet.
But you mentioned kind of the broad spectrum of music that you enjoy and also that you like to play. So, what was the attraction of joining Imperial Triumphant then? What was your first impression of kind of the music that Zach made?
Well, the music was actually quite a bit different back then when I first
Mm,
joined the band than what it's evolved into.
sure.
But I liked it already. I mean, that's why I went and joined the band. Um, and it was also the band's very first tour.
Mm,
So I was attracted to the idea of hitting the ground floor and just getting to work and try to help build a project that Zach already put a bunch of work into, And the music, I liked it. I don't know. I listened to the music and I was like, oh, this is interesting. It was already different sounding to me.
Mm.
And as a bass player in metal, it's a very weird world. You live in a world of where a lot of records, there's really nothing. The bass is just doubling the guitar kind of thing, right? Yeah. Sometimes you don't even really hear the bass in some metal recordings, But there was like this room in his music, like the way he put it together harmonically at that time, that I heard things, So I thought maybe it might be fun to try it out.
What were those initial kind of creative sessions between the three of you then, like initially? Because as you mentioned, you joined the band. You're still at the precipice of something, and then it's allowed to grow. So what were those first creative sessions like?
Yeah, they were pretty cool. I mean, we hit it off very quickly, Zach, Kenny, and myself, as a band, and we just it became. I think it became very natural for us to just pick our instruments up and just make sounds together and just start making music. I don't really know how else to describe it. It's pretty amazing how it happened.
Is it very inevitable that there's a certain level of kind of improvisation that comes with it then, because of the type of music that you make, and that there is, how would I put it, less restrictions on what you could make?
Yeah, I would say that the three of us all have a similar mindset or perspective about improvising, which improvising to me is a very natural part of making music, because if you think back to when you first start playing an instrument, the first thing you do is you pick it up or you go to it and you make a sound. So you're improvising. That's what you're doing. And it gives you some feedback, right? You put in some control and it gives you some feedback. And then that feedback hopefully inspires you to continue down the road, because eventually it becomes an insane puzzle that you try to figure out, right? And very challenging at times as you go through the whole lifetime of being a musician.
Sure.
But that, I think all three of us have that same mentality. So, improvising is again very natural for us to do and incorporate in all our music.
Is every song that you as a band write, and is that a kind of starting a new puzzle?
Yeah.
Do you kind of feel like you have a certain framework kind of that you can use or implement?
I would say writing a song is a puzzle, because you're creating it out of thin air. Well, it exists, something about it already exists in the universe. Sure. That metaphysical side of it, that's over my head. I don't think any of us really understand that, right? It's here somehow.
That's the magic of music, yeah.
It's magical, yeah, because there's some type of energy transference that comes through sound from the universe. And so we tap into that, and somehow we grab a piece here, we put it together, start organizing it, and the next thing you know, you have a song or a composition or a piece of music or whatever it might be. And that's a pretty amazing puzzle, actually.
When it comes to, especially because you mentioned that the sound of the band when you joined was quite different than what it has become now, how do you see your contribution in that area then? How did you think you kind of altered the what is it called when something goes into orbit or something, when you alter a trajectory of the band?
Sure. I think anytime a person, well, I mean, that's one of the cool things about a band, is that it's not one person, right? That's what makes a band so cool, But I think anytime a new person comes into a group, there's going to be an alteration in the trajectory, as you said, because we're all individuals, you know, even though we have a similar thread in it, you know, as people in humanity, but we all have these individual perspectives that are a sum total of our life experiences. So when I joined the band, it immediately was going to go in a different direction. We had no say in that. Like, that's just what was going to happen, right? Because it was mostly Zach in the beginning. It was mostly his. He didn't even really have a full band happening. He had different people he was using, you know. And I might add, one of the biggest challenges in music is keeping a band. That's a very difficult thing to do.
I've noticed that over the years, yes, in terms of who I get to speak to.
Yeah, exactly. And we're coming up on this band, the three of us, in October is going to be 9 years that we're together. So that's a pretty solid accomplishment. Sure. But yeah, so I would say that I brought in a lot of different things because all three of us are leader types of musicians. In other words, we all have had our own bands or groups or ensembles as the leader, meaning the person who's, you know, putting it together, bringing a lot of music to the table. And we all write music. So I would say I had a pretty big influence on the way what it's turned into now, with all of my different influences, whether it be from films and you know, drawing inspiration from other mediums, or just my own musical tastes, and you know, being in music for so long, you know.
Yeah, sure. And then the aesthetics is something I will ask you a couple of questions about in a minute. But one last thing about the kind of the earlier period then, because you mentioned you're all somewhat captains of your own ship. So, and the kind of the analogy I hear quite a lot is there's too many captains on the ship whenever a band doesn't work. So how do you make it work? How do you make it work? And especially, as you mentioned, 9 years now, when people do have strong opinions about ideas and the creative process.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of making it work is understanding that it's still a band and that it's a team, and that everyone has things that they are good at that are different from the other person. And then the greatest achievement or greatest way to achieve your goals is to utilize those things that each of us are good at. So we really have different roles, even though on our own we're leader types. We have different roles in the band, and it's evolved that way. And you know, I think we work pretty well together and understand each other's assets, you know. And so that's how that works. You have to, you know, just keep your ego under control, and you know, don't let things get too crazy. Don't take shit too personally. Like, just work. You're all working for the same goal, you know. And so we've been. I think we've been doing that. I can't speak on their behalf, but I think we've been doing that.
Oh, that's good to hear, though.
Yeah.
If we delve into the music a little bit more, then, because how do you? If we let's say go from Vile Luxury to Alphaville, what for you, and then I suppose in a similar fashion to Spirit of Ecstasy, how do you approach each album? Do you have certain things in mind that you want to do beforehand, or are they reactions on each other? How do you kind of hone into what an album will become?
That's a crazy process, you know. The album starts as some kind of shred of a tiny idea, you know, and there's the musical aspect. You know, one riff could start an album. You know, somebody might have a song demo that gets sent to the three of us, and you know, that might go in the vault and say, okay, here we go. We have the beginnings of a song for the next record. And then a lot of it has to do with visualizing, you know, Often we like to talk about it a lot and start visualizing what the next record might entail, whether that be some idea for artwork, some concept of thread of content that goes through all the lyrics,
Mm.
some idea even that comes from totally outside, and then once we start visualizing a goal, a record, then we just start chipping away and working towards that.
Have those conversations already started now for a new album? Because
Yeah.
I had to check the Spirit of Ecstasy. Almost it's already a year ago. It feels like it wasn't that long ago. But
Yeah, it's a year ago. Yeah, I know. It does feel like it would just, well, that it seems like a long time ago for us, I think, because we were on the road so much. So it
fair enough.
feels like a lifetime went by already. A lifetime of like trying different barbecue and different food all over the world. I would say we've been talking about it for a while already, and we're working on it. We're working on it already. So,
But for you yourself, then personally, do you challenge yourself into this is just about a hypothetical next album? But do you have ideas like I want to tackle certain things on bass or certain things on keyboard? I want to expand what I do on drums or whatever it may be. Do you kind of think about how you yourself how your craft changes as well?
absolutely. I think I'm always thinking of, what can I bring to the table for the next record that might give me a little area to work something else out that I've been working on, personally as a musician, or something that might be really interesting and challenging for me to try to pull off, like playing some keys in a tune and bass live. Like, I'm always trying to think, and I'm always thinking about the live show too, because it's very important to us what we bring to the audience, live, because we're very much a live band, even though we have a little bit of playback and stuff that we use, but we play with that, and it's still just part of the live performance. But yeah, there's always different challenges. I mean, it's challenging to keep it interesting too, you're trying to figure out, okay, let's keep this music interesting for not just for me, but for the guys. I'm always thinking, if I'm working on some demo, I'm always thinking about them, like how do they play, their style. Is this going to be fun and interesting and or challenging for them, and I think we kind of all do that for each other. And then yeah, I would say that playing the bass has also just been a crazy journey for me for the past 10 years, because it was not my first instrument, so
Sure.
I've really been enjoying the bass.
Were there any, especially when you started out, were there any bassists you tried to pick out to kind of figured out how they did what they did? And I can imagine, especially with the type of music you make as well, you can check out metal bass players, but you can also check out like standing up double bass type musicians and kind of figure out what type of sounds they make and how they kind of accompany the music. So what has been your interest when it comes to bass?
Yeah, I mean, I've basically given myself my own education as a bass player, but because I've already gone through learning how to play an instrument, to a level that I wanted to achieve, like the piano, I had a good idea of how to make that happen, how to achieve that, But I did.
Right.
I still watch tons of bass. I love the bass, so I watch tons of bass videos. I listened. I was already into the bass though a long time, since I was a kid.
Okay.
It's not like it all of a sudden jumped out at me like, oh, I want to play the bass. Like, I always loved the bass. And then when you're a piano player, you're also a bass player because you have two hands, and one of those hands is often playing the bass in the low register of the piano. And then the cool thing about the piano is that you understand how things function as a bass
Mm.
player, because you're also playing chords. So you're playing chords and you understand that the bass is doing all these cool things. So it was like a whole crazy crash course that I just gave myself, and I worked at it a lot. I practiced many, many hours a day. I joined the band right away. So I was like, I have to make sure I have my shit together. You know, we're touring. You know, I had to just figure out all that stuff along the way, and I'm still figuring it out, which is the
And
fun part.
I bought a piano not too long ago, and I'm figuring it out
I
now.
see it back there.
Not certainly not at the level obviously as you do, but I'm trying to figure it out now. Um,
The piano is cool. The piano is cool because like it makes a sound as soon as you play it. It
mm,
gives you a sound like immediately, but then the problems begin.
yeah.
Like you make the sound, and then there's a whole lifetime of puzzle to figure out in that thing, you know. So
Mentioned the aesthetics, and you as well. I believe you are a filmmaker as well. You direct the music videos or a
I did
number of
some of
music
them,
videos.
yeah.
Yeah.
I did some of the videos, yeah.
And then I believe your father was also a video editor or well, in movies.
Yeah, he came from out of the film school. He was you know, I mean, he didn't go to film school. I mean, he came out of the world, the school of film, actual film.
Mm,
And he was a cinematographer and a
okay.
film editor, and then eventually he became a video editor for television news here in New York City as when things switched from film to video, you know. But yeah, so I learned filmmaking from him, basically, just completely no formal education at all, just him telling me things and showing me films.
What I
And
like
that's
about oh sorry.
I know, I was just gonna say that filmmaking is a huge passion of mine. I love making films, love, 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 and I've teetered on. I go back and forth between like loving music and loving film and
Okay.
loving music. It's been kind of a struggle my whole life, actually.
I can imagine, and there even though there's some similarities, there's also they're very different mediums, and then there's this I think famous quote: "The medium is the message." So whenever you
Marshall
do
McLuhan.
yeah exactly. So whenever you do video, what are you trying to convey, especially for Imperial Triumphant? And we could pick any video that you made, but what is it kind of your approach and what you try to convey?
Well, you know, the cool thing in Imperial is that the project, the guys, the band, everybody involved, they kind of let me indulge in my
Okay.
filmmaking side, you know, like so we've made some crazy videos actually that
Right.
were a shit ton of work, and they're kind of like little movies, you know, like small
Sure.
films. And so a lot of them have been homages to great filmmakers or great films, you know, or a
Mm,
combination of. And usually I try to make something that's connected to the song, like the words of the song, you know?
sure.
And I try to make something that isn't explaining things too much. I don't like to underestimate the audience, you know?
Mm.
So I just try to do that, and then just try to make something that's visually cool to look at, you know?
What has the reaction been to the type of music that you make? Because I can imagine when you play festivals like you did a couple of weeks ago in Europe, do people kind of figure out what you're about as a band, or is it a bit strange to them?
I think it's all of the above, you know? It really depends on the person or what their background is. Some people are fixated on what we're doing and they're into
Mm,
every detail, the minutia, and they're eating it all up, and they're getting all of it, and they get all the, you know, esoteric things and the
mm,
symbolic things, and they're just into the same world. And some people, it's just I would imagine it probably just sounds like a blanket of noise to them, you know, at first, and then maybe if something about it is intriguing to them and they continue to give it a listen, they might start to uncover things and make sense of it, you know. But
no, I think
at the festivals, we generally have pretty good reception.
oh, that's good to hear. No, but I think that's definitely true that there are certain bands, and I would put you in that category as well, where with each listen you hear something new, and there's different elements that you can hear, different textures, maybe the dynamics, the way they shift. So it's really interesting. Is it for you guys? Is it kind of a necessity in the way you write that just in order to keep things interesting for yourselves as well?
We really don't think about any of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
We just make music that we like. We just make music that's part of who we are. We never set out to make something that some people call it jazz metal or whatever. Like, there's no intention of that. It's just, this is how we hear music. This is the music that this band plays. This is the way we play together. So it's just natural.
Oh, that's awesome. Last question then. There have been two covers that have come out. Will there be more? And like we talked about kind of earlier, do you have somewhat of a timeline of when new Imperial music will also come out that you've written yourself in a sense?
Yeah, I mean that's been kind of challenging because we were on the road so much, and we're actually going back on the road for like 3 weeks with Behemoth, which should be fun. But it's hard to say when the next album will come out. I mean, I'd like to say 2024 sometime there will be a new Imperial Triumphant album. As far as the covers go, they're all recorded. We did all that a while ago before we started going out on the road a lot. And we worked with Colin Marston, who records most of our music, because we were away, so we were working with him for the mixing, and he would send it to us. It was a crazy back and forth because we weren't able to be there for the whole entire thing. And so there's more covers coming out. There's one we announced the third one that's coming out soon. Okay. And that's going to be a Rush cover. Okay. So we'll see what happens. Every time one goes out, it's always like, I wonder what people are going to think of this one.
But is that also then a very organic way in which you pick those covers? Like you said, it's kind of like, okay, we like all kinds of music, so you just stumble onto something. Yeah, this would be cool if we did this. Yeah,
it's not quite like throwing darts,
Okay.
However, covers, I mean, there's so many amazing songs. There's so many amazing bands. There's so much amazing music that's out there in the world, right? We had a list of covers that was, from here to Texas, like it's, and then picking them, it's not that easy because, you're only going to pick a handful, a few to do. And we just decided, we just started narrowing it down as the three of us until all three of us were like, yes, let's do that one. Yes, let's do that one. Yes, let's do that one. Yes, let's do that one, and that's how we did it. Playing covers is cool because someone already wrote a great song for you.
That helps.
Yeah, but it's pretty big actually.
No, but at the same time, I can imagine also that would create some trepidation because people know the song, and especially when it's a big song and it's kind of this legendary track, then
especially
you have
Rush
to do justice by it. Well, you have to do justice by it, right?
Especially Rush fans. They really know their songs, right?
So excited about the next couple of weeks then?
Yeah, I think it's going to be cool.
About the reaction?
Yeah, I always look forward to seeing like what happens once, because it's not ours anymore once it's out there. That's it. Like we already did it, and then it's not up to us anymore. Now, are people going to connect with it? Are they going to enjoy it? And yeah, especially like you said, when you pick a song from, we chose bands that are huge, right? So,
sure.
It's not like we're doing unpopular, obscure,
like B-sides or something. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, we're doing, we tried to choose some deep cuts, but the bands that we chose are gigantic. So, But I feel like that's kind of part of the fun, and that's also part of the challenge because like when you go into the studio to do a cover, I mean, first you got to rehearse, you got to learn it first, then you got to rehearse the shit out of it the way to get it how you want it. Then you come up with your own arrangement. Then the whole thing becomes the band's signature has to be on it, and you know, we didn't want to just play these songs the way that they already
Right.
played them. That doesn't make any sense, you know, right? I don't think the bands I don't think Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson would want to hear us play their song the way that they did it, you know, right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, or Johnny Greenwood and Tom York or whatever, you know, like I think it's more interesting to hear someone reinterpret a song, you know. But it's a lot of fun to do covers, you know, so
And it's going to be fun to hear what you guys have come up with. So, Steve, may I thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me.
my pleasure, Robin. Thanks for having me.